G'day folks, my name's Dave West from the Boomerang Alliance, and we're here today to talk to you about microplastics and our latest blog on why we need to take action on them. To start with, while we've probably all heard the term microplastics, it's possible we don't know exactly what they mean. Microplastics are pieces of plastic found in the environment that are smaller than 5 millimetres in diameter. Now, there's two types of microplastics, what are known as primary microplastics, which are those plastics that are released in a small form and can't be captured by our waste management systems, and secondary microplastics, which is macroplastic pieces of litter like a bottle or a plastic bag that break down into fragments. Behind my shoulder you can see a series of magnified images that we've taken with the microscope of various forms of microplastic. So these here are the things you're hearing about being microbeads, commonly found in facial scrubs and exfoliants, but also found in detergents and floor polishes, etc. The second group of microplastics are nurdles, which come in the form of a tiny resin pellet or this flake when plastics are made out of recyclate. Over to our far side there you have nanofibres, nano being even smaller again than micro, and they typically come from things like washing synthetic clothing, as you can see at the top, or those tiny fibrous materials found in, for instance, a cigarette butt. Microplastic is more like this one on the left, and this image, which is 5mm by 5mm, actually shows 5 separate pieces of microplastic. So beyond the fact that the proliferation is far higher when you start to include microplastics, in the order of 3,500 pieces of microplastic per kilometre, macroplastic per kilometre along our shoreline, where upwards of 60,000 pieces if you include microplastic, is that size matters when we're talking about the seriousness of the pollution as well. Firstly, it's obviously far more difficult, nigh on impossible, to capture these sort of tiny items compared to a macroplastic item. The second issue is toxicity. Because these items have quite a high surface area to weight, while they're small, the area is much greater than you would find in, say, a bottle compared to its weight. They have a far higher rate of absorption, or ability to act like a sponge and suck up the toxics that are found in the surrounding seawater. Research that was conducted in the last couple of years has indicated that a single microbead can be as much as 1,000,000 times more toxic than the seawater surrounding it. And finally, and probably most obvious, the smaller the item is, the more likely it is to be ingested and enter our food chains. The latest research looking at things like coral and plankton indicates that those species are actually ingesting nano and micro scale plastics at about the same rate as their food. What does that mean? That means that 96% of all the Earth's biodiversity is likely to be ingesting plastic. So, I guess the obvious question is, what do we do about it? Well, in the first instance, government's just got to start to acknowledge that it exists. We've had a threat abatement plan in place for Australia to deal with marine debris, particularly plastics, for 7 years now, and not only are we not taking action on this stuff, we don't even yet acknowledge core parts of the plastic pollution cycle, like this tyre dust that is produced on every kilometre we drive along our roads, or those synthetic fibres that are polluting. At a second level, up to 1/3 of this microplastic is actually entering our environment unlawfully. Whether that is a resin pellet being used by a plastic manufacturer, the residual that is produced in plastic recycling, or simply controlling the waste that is already in waste facilities escaping their premises. And we simply need to do more than get our environmental regulators off their butt and enforcing the law. The next point of action that is important is probably to ensure that we take action that is meaningful on these microbeads. Past Environment Minister Greg Hunt announced that he will be phasing out microbeads through regulatory action by June 2018. Let me say that's just too slow. There is no reason we can't take action now. The second thing is that because the personal care aspect of these beads has become so populist, we're failing to recognise that they're a minor part of the source. Studies from Germany have shown that there's about 600 tonnes of this stuff going into the water, but the stuff attached to detergents, floor polishes, car waxes, etc. is in the order of 20 times higher. So you've got to ask the question, why are we going to ban one tiny bit of the problem rather than the primary source? And lastly, we are way overdue to take action on synthetic fibres, the tiny fibres that are emitted every time we wash polyester or rayon, other synthetic clothing. Simply by requiring new washing machines to be fitted with a filter that stops them being discharged into the sewer can eliminate as much as 10% of all marine plastic pollution currently. I hope you join us on our blogs and give us your 2 cents worth about what sort of action we need to take, because this is a problem that we can't afford to wait on.